So you won titles in 1998, 1999, and as odd as it seems, you have a trajectory and a path that goes alongside the University of Iowa, which wouldn't make sense to some people because you think D2 and D1. But let's go to the UNI Open, and I think it would probably be 1997, 1998 season. So I think it would be the December of 1997. You got all the way to the finals, and you wrestled a guy named Mark Ironside, who eventually was a two-time NCAA wrestling champion. Take us through that and what it was like to wrestle him in the finals and what the result was.
Well, you got to put things in perspective, too, for people, because I don't know how relevant Mark Ironside is, or for that matter, I am, right? So people got to know who Mark Ironside was. You know, he was like Zane Rutherford of the day. And you know this, but I don't think everybody knows this. So when I talk about this story, which I'm not embarrassed of, I'm actually pretty proud of it because it changed me. And to me, it goes back to high school because my father loved Gable, you know, because he was the same era as Gable. All of his friends and my uncles and my cousins is Gable. So the 80s and 90s, it was all about Dan Gable. Dan Gable was wrestling back then. And my high school coach, who was an All-American for Nebraska, his name was Rick Allgood, he was a Gable guy. And that Gable style, you know, we'll talk about the style a little bit later, but, you know, everybody was influenced by Gable. I went to Iowa camp as a junior in high school, and I met Lincoln McAravey and the Steiners and obviously the Brands brothers. And so I really have based my style around Oklahoma State and Iowa growing up, right? Those were the two programs. Try to take as much as you can from both those programs. I get to college, I wanted to be a cowboy, you know, coming out of high school. I wanted to be a cowboy. I fancied myself an Oklahoma State cowboy. I even had aspirations of leaving UNO after my first year and going to Oklahoma State. That didn't happen. Very few people leave the UNO program. But so I'm a freshman, you know, and I actually wrestled in the UNI tournament 4 times. It was the only tournament I never won of all the tournaments we went to at UNO. And Jeff McGinnis was in my bracket. And I had, you know, idolized Jeff McGinnis. I thought he was just amazing. And he was on the other side. So I am a wrestler. I might wrestle McGinnis in the finals. And I run into this guy named Tom Smith in the semifinals. And I don't know if you know who Tom Smith is?
Yeah, two-timer.
Yeah, I think he was 3-timer.
Yeah.
He was 3-timer for Warburg, yes. And I'm winning. I'm kicking his butt. I'm beating him by 5. And he reverses me to my back with like 15 seconds left in the third period and beats me. Maybe I was beating him by 4, and he beat me by 1. And so I came back, took third that year, but I was like, okay, I can compete at this level. Ironside had already had the famous Colot match at the time too, you know, and I watched it like you watched it, like everybody else watched it, like a fanboy, like this is amazing. You know, that was 2 years before I wrestled this guy. So my junior year, the season starts. I'm wrestling really well. I'm ranked 2nd in the country. We go to the Kaufman. I win the Kaufman. Okay, I win the Kaufman, which very tough tournament. I won the Central Missouri Open really easy, and so I think I'm 13-0 going into the winter break. And coach says, "Hey, I was coming to the UNI. They're bringing everybody," and I start getting nervous right then. But I make a goal in my mind. I want to wrestle Ironside. I want to wrestle him. I want to compete with him. Okay. And so I'm back in my high school over Christmas break, and I'm feeling good. I'm training hard. And we get to the tournament. I happen to be the 2 seed, which is unbelievable. Okay. And I beat the Wisconsin starter. I beat the where was the kid from? Wisconsin, Michigan State. Then I get to the semifinals. So I won the first match. I won really easy, and then I get to the semifinals. And Nick Flack from UNI is on my side of the bracket. He had just beaten Mike Zadek in the quarters, and so we have this awesome match. One of my favorite matches, and I squeak by Nick Flack. I beat him in overtime. I take him down in overtime, and every match I wrestle, I'm starting to notice Iowa coaches in the corners watching me as the day went on. And in the semifinals, I look over and I see 3 Iowa coaches in the corner, including Terry Brands. And my heart rate starts to go up right then, right? I win the match. I come off the match. I'm like, whew, I did it. I accomplished my goal. And then it hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, oh shit, I'm about to wrestle Mark Ironside. And I had never been in that big of a match before. I'd never wrestled anybody that considered that good. I really didn't know if I really belonged on that stage with him. And I go to my coaches. I go to Coach Denny and I say, hey, I got Ironside. What's the game plan? And he said, you're wrestling great. Do what you've been doing. And he was right. I'd wrestled probably better than I'd ever wrestled before. I wrestled out of my mind good. And I went, that's not what I wanted to hear. That's not what I want to hear. Because these other guys, coach, I'm thinking, these other guys ain't Ironside that I beat. What do I do against Ironside? I go to the assistant coach at the time, Ronnie Higdon. I go, hey, what's the plan? Same answer. Do what you've been doing. Okay. So I didn't do what I've been doing. I sat there before the finals. I watched Ironside warm up. And I didn't even warm up. I just kind of stood there, almost peeing down my leg, just shaking out. My hands were ice cold. I remember like it was yesterday. My legs were weak. My stomach was tied in knots. And I'm watching Ironside do sprints on the other side while Brands is sprinting with him, screaming at him. And I'm going, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I got nobody's even talking to me, But the worst part about it was they thought I could wrestle with him. I kept hearing over during the day, hey, people think you got a shot, right? And I'm going, that's just making me more nervous. And so the final start, and I think I haven't watched the match ever. I can't watch that. Can't watch it. But I have it on tape, but I can't watch it. And I take like 6 shots in the first 15 seconds. Bow, 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 bow. And he's pretty cautious, has his hands down, and just sort of like stops me, and stalks me, and then pushes me out of bounds. And he pushed me out of bounds, and I stood up, and I looked in the corner, and I saw Zaleski and Dan Gable and Joe Williams and Tom and Terry Brands. And I went, oh, shit, I'm wrestling Mark Ironside. And I walked back to the middle, and he took me down with my own move, with a low single, and I just collapsed like a baby. It's like it was a shell of myself out there. Really, it's regretful, but it was such a learning experience because I go, you didn't wrestle him. You didn't really. And I wonder how many other guys he did that to over his career, where you literally just lost to his name and to the singlet. And it's not like he didn't beat me. He beat me, but I felt like I wasn't. It wasn't like he was overwhelmingly strong or so big. It was just pressure, and I broke mentally. And I remember thinking, I got to get off this wrestling mat. And he put me in a near side cradle, and I didn't fight it very hard, and he rolled me over and pinned me. And one of the most painful losses, if not the most painful loss of my whole career. And I should, it's like he pinned everybody. So what's the big deal? He pinned everybody. But it was the way I lost and letting people down, letting myself down. It's a 3.5-hour drive back to Omaha. I cried for 3.5 hours, like somebody killed my dog. Like it was so painful. I couldn't look in the mirror. I was so upset with myself. But that sparked a burning desire, and it sparked a never again sort of attitude. And I swear I made a decision, like, I will never do that again. I will never, you have to kill me. I'm willing to die now before I will totally cream puff out there, lay an egg and just let some other man's name beat me. And I learned a lot from that match. So.
And then you got a form of retribution the following season where at the UNO Open, you wrestled Doug Schwab. So you were the Division II NCAA champion eventually in 1999. Doug Schwab was eventually the Division I champion, and you guys wrestled. You guys met at the UNO Open in 1998 over in the 98-99 season. a little different result. And I'm assuming you took those lessons from Mark Ironside into the match with Doug Schwab, who ended up being an Olympian in 2008.
Yes, absolutely. I don't win that Doug Schwab match without the Ironside experience, no doubt. And I remember just having no fear going into the match and knowing that I had really just wrestle. You have nothing to lose. And that's the thing about wrestling, you know, and I think when kids get this too, it changes them. People just want you to go fight. They just want to see you go fight and do your best. And if you can commit to doing that, then you never lose. You really never lose. And so I knew that I wasn't going to lose the match. I wasn't going to lose that match. You know, there's 2 matches in every match. There's the performance and then there's the win-loss. So I was already committed to dying out there with him, you know, and not being scared of his name. And I knew he wasn't, you know, in my mind, even though Doug ended up having better credentials than even Mark Ironside, but I knew in my mind he wasn't Mark Ironside, you know, so I wasn't so intimidated by, you know, just because he was a Hawkeye. And I, you know, now I've wrestled 2-3 Hawkeyes, and I realize that they're not all superhumans too. And I went out, and the first part of the match, he headbutts me. You know, I don't know if it was an intentional headbutt, but he was coming forward on the mat, and he sort of blacked my eyes. And you know, now we know anytime you see stars, that's a concussion, right? You see stars, you're concussed. So he concussed me off the whistle, concussed me, and I sort of backed up, closed my eyes, and then he's rushing me, and I just changed levels and shot. And I shot, and I got in so deep and picked him up and drove him all the way across the mat. And my confidence just went through the roof. I said, I can beat this guy. And I think I took him down 4 or 5 times. The final score, I think it says 8-3, but it was really 10-2. They didn't put the score up the right way. 10-2 was the score of that match. And I did feel vindicated after that experience.